Hey everybody, welcome back to Horror Trans. My name is Stephanie Bree, and I am a transgender woman. I talk about all things horror, and it's time for horror icons, and this time I'm doing something different. Instead of doing a filmmaker or a villain from a horror movie, I'm doing Tommy Jarvis, who is a survivor of a horror movie. He's the final girl, kind of. Final boy, I guess, in a couple of Jason movies. And one Jason knockoff movie. So Tommy Jarvis is introduced in the final chapter, which is Friday the 13th, Part 4, which was originally intended to be the end of the franchise, where they definitively, air quotes, killed off Jason. So Tommy Jarvis is originally played by Corey Feldman, and he's a little boy. I'd say 10 or 11 years old, maybe 9 or 10, maybe. He's younger than 13. I'll say that. And he is a side character in a movie where Jason is targeting the teenagers, because that's what he does. But at the end of the final chapter, when the final girl, his sister, his older sister, is confronting and battling Jason, Tommy Jarvis shaves his head off, goes downstairs, and pretends to be baby Jason to trick and stun baby Jason, or Jason, grown up Jason. Now, we've seen in Friday the 13th Part 2, Jason has the mind of a child, so he's easy to trick. And so, at first, the ruse works, and Jason stops attacking the sister and pays attention to Tommy Jarvis, who takes Jason's machete and fucks him up. Now, despite the fact that there are more Friday the 13th after this one, I will say Tommy Jarvis did definitively kill Jason in the final chapter. He did. And I say that because in the next film, Jason isn't present. We have a copycat. And in Jason Lives, where we finish the Tommy Jarvis story, we get zombie Jason. So, there's that. A few years later, maybe 5 or 6 years later, give or take a year, Tommy Jarvis is now in his mid-teens, late teens, and he's at a halfway home. He's being transported from the psychiatric hospital to the halfway home. Because presumably murdering Jason, fucked him up in the head. Not just murdering Jason, but watching Jason murder his mom, his dog, all of the teenagers around the lake, and almost killing his sister, which we don't hear from the sister ever again. So, her fate is up in the air. I'm not going to say dead or alive. I'm just going to say her fate's up in the air. That's for fan fiction. However, while Tommy Jarvis, or I'll say it this way, a character named Tommy Jarvis, appears in 3 separate Friday the 13th movies, I will make the case that these are 3 separate individuals named Tommy Jarvis, insofar as that each character is given a completely different personality from each other. You could chalk this up to character development, but if you watch them as a trilogy, there's not really character development so much as it's a different guy with the same name. Although it is supposed to be canon-wise, continuity-wise, the same character. So in Friday the 13th Part 5, A New Beginning, Tommy Jarvis is mute for the most part, and he's surrounded by other mental kids with mental health disabilities or mental health issues at the halfway house. And somebody is murdering them one by one. And the movie goes out of its way to make you think Tommy is dressing up like Jason and killing people. The other people, the other survivors of the movie, also believe this to be the case. Now, I've already talked about this movie when I reviewed the Freddy vs. Jason franchise, the Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th franchises. So, I've already talked about this, how it's a copycat, obviously. It doesn't make any fucking sense. But Tommy does help stop the copycat. And then we assume he gets better, air quotes. And we get to Jason Lives, Friday the 13th Part 6, where we're reintroduced to Tommy Jarvis again. And this time, Tommy has been released or escaped. They don't make it clear. He's either been released or escaped from the mental hospital. They don't make it clear. He's no longer at the mental hospital, but the sheriff, when he encounters the sheriff, threatens to send him back. So, again, it's not clear if he escaped or if he left on his own free will. But what is clear is he is pissed off at Jason and obsessed with Jason. And so he goes to the graveyard where Jason's body is buried, him and his friend, on a thunderous, stormy night, obviously, because it's a horror movie. And they dig up Jason's body, basically to piss on it. Not literally, but that's what they're there to do. And he accidentally resurrects Jason as a zombie. I say kinda zombie. We call him Zombie Jason in the fandom, but he's not really a zombie. And the reason why I say that is because the cop shoots him in the head and he just brushes it off like no big deal and then keeps killing. So he's not a zombie in the truest sense, because if you shoot a zombie in the head, they're done for. So he's something else entirely. But for simplicity's sake, we're going to call him Zombie Jason. So, Tommy Jarvis spends the rest of the movie trying to warn the people of Crystal Lake, which has now been renamed Forest Green, that Jason's back and he's going to go to Crystal Lake and kill again. And the sheriff locks Tommy up. The sheriff's girlfriend has a crush on Tommy, so she rescues him, and they go on a quest to stop Jason together and get a bunch of their friends killed along the way, including her dad and the other cops. What's unique about Jason Lives is it's the only Friday the 13th out of all of them that actually has kids at the camp. The summer camp. I know. It's weird. A summer camp with kids. Who would have ever saw that coming? Tommy is nothing like his previous portrayals in this movie. In the final chapter, Tommy is an inquisitive kid with a strong will to live. In A New Beginning, Tommy is traumatized and essentially catatonic for the most part. And he just sort of exists. In Jason Lives, Tommy Jarvis has a personality. He's got a sense of humor. He's a character. He's driven. He's motivated. You know, he's alive and animated. You know, he's got a personality. Tommy does more or less, again, succeed in defeating Jason. And I say more or less because you don't find out until The New Blood that Jason was resurrected again, but this time using supernatural forces. So Tommy did defeat Jason, technically, twice. But his defeats were undone in subsequent films because, you know, it's a franchise. They got dollar signs in their eyeballs, and, you know, this is their cash cow. So, as a trilogy, this does not work. It doesn't work as a trilogy because it's disjointed. It's disjointed in that from movie to movie, the Tommy character is completely different, and the people of the town, the people of the surrounding area, people surrounding Tommy are completely different. They react differently to Tommy and Jason in each movie differently than they did in the previous film. So there's no coherence at all between these three films. They're loosely connected in that they're all Friday the 13th. They kind of sort of have a Jason-esque killer in all three of them. And Tommy is a character, or there's a character named Tommy Jarvis in all three of them. Now, I have been involved in online discussions with Friday fans who want Tommy Jarvis to come back because they claim his story wasn't finished. I would argue his story was finished. He put Jason to rest and he moved on. He got peace of mind and moved on in his life. The fact that Jason didn't stay dead doesn't really seem to bother Tommy because he probably, presumably, left Forest Green / Crystal Lake and got the hell out of there and went to live a normal life somewhere the fuck else. So as far as I'm concerned, there's no more story to tell. Tommy Jarvis, his story wrapped. He went on, got married, had babies, lived happily ever after. The end. So let's talk about the individual Tommy Jarvises. The Corey Feldman Tommy Jarvis is really good. Corey Feldman is fantastic in every fucking thing he does. And he's fantastic in this as well. As to be expected. And he gets the honor of being the first person to definitively kill Jason. The Tommy Jarvis in A New Beginning is not interesting at all, is boring as fuck, is kind of lame, and is just sort of there to be there? Not even to move the plot along. He's just sort of there. Tommy doesn't have to be in that movie, and the outcome of the movie doesn't change. Tommy has no impact on the outcome of that movie one way or the other. He's just present in that movie. The Tommy Jarvis in Jason Lives is the most fleshed out of the characters, fully developed, with motivation, personality, etc. And like I said, he's very lively, very animated character. Very hyper, unlike the Part 5 Tommy Jarvis. Now, you could see hints of Corey Feldman as a hyperactive little kid. So, I would say, yeah, I can kind of see a progression from Corey Feldman to Jason Lives Tommy Jarvis if you just ignore Part 5 altogether. Unless you're going to go the route of, okay, he was traumatized in Part 5, allegedly rehabilitated, and we get a rehabilitated Tommy Jarvis and Jason Lives. If you're going to stretch it that way, you could argue, if you wanted to, that there's some character development. That's a bit of a stretch for me. I'm of the mindset that these are three separate timelines. These are three separate Tommy Jarvises. And that's what I'm sticking with, because that makes more sense to me than this character being catatonic in one movie, being inquisitive in one movie, and being fucking, Pauly Shore in the third movie.